Tomorrow, September 11th, is the 20th anniversary of the 2001 terrorist attacks in the United States. The day represents a milestone in a new chapter of global warfare. In the U.S., there will be commemoration ceremonies held in New York, Pennsylvania, and even near Washington. Welcome to WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and this is our special weekly broadcast of the WION-VOA Co-Production. Today, we'll focus on that fateful day, as well as the U.S. political climate after 9/11. Let's get started. Now, in 2001, Justin Tirelli, a fire and emergency medical services captain at the Arlington County Fire Department in Virginia, had been on the job only a few months. On September 11th, he was called to work after a plane crashed into the Pentagon. Voice of America brings you this next report. Take a look.
Justin Tirelli, a fire and emergency medical services captain at Arlington County Fire Department in Virginia, was just 24 years old when a hijacked plane crashed into a wall of the Pentagon on September 11, 2001.
When you have a big event like that, 20 years sounds like a big number, but it doesn't feel like anything. It feels like it was just yesterday.
Tirelli and his companions understood that the United States was under attack when they received the order to go to the Pentagon.
There was so much coming at us. There were people running out of the building. There was injured people. There was smoke and huge fire. There was fire trucks over there, police cars over here. There were reports of planes coming in. Evacuate. All right, go back in. All right, evacuate again.
The exhausting fight against the flames caused by the impact continued for hours. During that time, Tirelli had to go inside the Pentagon to get to the roof. On his way up, he saw debris and parts of the plane. The smoke was so dense and overwhelming that Tirelli thought he was not going to get out of there alive.
There was nothing but fire. And every time we sprayed water on it, it didn't seem like it was doing anything. It was just spraying water and it would just go into the abyss.
Tirelli heard people screaming and crying and saw military personnel running outside. His team of firefighters refused to take breaks. Nobody wanted to leave. The images are still with him.
I'll never forget some of the people that I saw, the victims that I saw in there. Once we were helping to do some of the cleanup, we saw body parts of children. And knowing that there was more, that wasn't just a body. That wasn't just an inanimate object. That was a person with a family who was in mourning. They lost a loved one. And you know, once you wrap all that together, you realize the gravity of this, the seriousness of it, the size of it, and it touches you because I'm connected to those families even though I never met them.
The attack at the Pentagon changed Tirelli's life. Still, the firefighter doesn't feel like a hero. It was simply his job. Even after 20 years, he commemorates every anniversary. Jacopo Luzzi, VOA News, Washington.
To speak about this further, we're now joined by Voice of America's correspondent Amy Hybels. Amy is in fact in Arlington, Virginia, where the third hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon. Amy, thanks for joining us on this special broadcast. You, of course, are at a very significant location. As America reflects on the 20th anniversary of the attacks, what impact have the attacks had on everyday life, especially when it comes to security?
Here at the Pentagon, 184 people were killed on 9/11. Overall, the attacks killed nearly 3,000 people, including 41 from India. Now, all 19 terrorists who hijacked those 4 commercial airliners on that day also died. September 11th of 2001 has really changed the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy and domestic security here in this country. It also changed forever the iconic skyline of New York City. Another visible sign of change here in the U.S. is in regards to airport security. As you recall, they created the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA as it's called for short, and the transition to a much more comprehensive system of screening passengers and their baggage before they board any flights here in the United States. New technology was also added after September 11th. We have the Advanced Imaging Technology Machine, or AIT. It has now become a staple at most U.S. airports, and whenever you arrive to board your flight, you always have to go through a very rigorous screening process. They've also added canine teams with bomb-sniffing dogs. and only ticketed passengers are allowed to the gate. Cockpit doors were also reinforced, and many more federal air marshals were placed on flights. So really, the entire flying experience for the general public here in the United States has changed dramatically since September 11th of 2001. It's a totally different experience today than before these attacks.
Amy, my next question for you. What is the status of the trial of those accused of planning and aiding the September 11, 2001 terror attacks?
Sure, U.S. prosecution of 5 people accused of planning and aiding the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks resumed with pre-trial proceedings on Tuesday. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, a senior al-Qaeda figure and the alleged architect of the terror plot, along with 4 other detainees, filed into the courtroom of Guantanamo Bay Naval Base's Camp Justice on Tuesday. That particular courtroom hosts the military commissions, and that was the first time that there had been a hearing held since they were suspended during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, most of the morning hearing was taken up by defense lawyers. They were questioning the new judge's qualifications. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew McCall is actually the 7th judge to oversee the case at Guantanamo Bay. The defendants are facing charges that include conspiracy, attacking civilians, murder, hijacking aircraft, and terrorism. If convicted, they could face the death penalty.
Amy Heibel from Washington, thank you so much for all those updates. Stay with us on this broadcast. We'll come back to you for another story. Now, an abandoned strip mine near Shanksville in Pennsylvania is home to the largest memorial related to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. VOA's Kane Faribaugh, who reported from the crash site of Flight 93 on September 11th in 2001 and the days afterwards, reports on how the location has transformed in the last 20 years. Take a look.
Gordon Felt has made the trip to this remote part of central Pennsylvania too many times to count. It's become a routine visit he admits doesn't get easier the more he does it.
It's not, but it's important for me to be here.
Here is the Flight 93 National Memorial. Once a strip mine, now a permanent tribute to the 40 men and women who died here on September 11th, 2001, attempting to regain control of a hijacked aircraft from the terrorists who planned to crash it into the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., hundreds of kilometers away. Gordon Felt's brother was a passenger on Flight 93, and this field where the plane fell from the sky is his final resting place.
It is surreal at times. Early on, it became evident to us very quickly that our loved ones, the events surrounding their death had historical significance to our country. And it was difficult to reconcile that, to be able to give up a part of our memory of our loved ones to those that would be coming here.
And the 40 passenger and crew members aboard Flight 93 that day did something incredible. They came together, complete strangers, and they made a choice to do something, and they changed history that morning.
Catherine Hostetler works for the National Park Service, which oversees the Flight 93 Memorial Complex. For her, it's not just a job. The events of September 11th are a prominent part of her life since high school.
Yes, I grew up about 10 miles north of Flight 93 National Memorial.
A memorial that has transformed from scene of tragedy to national park in record time, officially designated on September 24th, 2002.
That's only 1 year and 13 days after the event. When you think of other national parks, national memorials, Pearl Harbor, Gettysburg, these places, it takes years for them to become what we consider today a national park. Flight 93, almost immediately the families, the congressman here in Pennsylvania, the president, realized that something needs to be done to preserve this landscape and to honor the people aboard Flight 93, the crew and passengers, and what they did that day.
What began as a shack and a simple metal fence holding memorabilia brought by those paying tribute at the site soon after the attacks is now a massive complex encompassing thousands of hectares of land with features that attract hundreds of thousands of visitors each year.
On an average summertime day, we'll have over 1,000, and on weekends, 2, sometimes 3,000 visitors.
This is a story that resonates with people still.
Gordon Felt and other family members of those on Flight 93 were involved in the design and development of the site throughout its transformation. Felt has always hoped the story of his brother and those on Flight 93 not only resonates with visitors, but also encourages reflection.
Most important, I want people to be able to walk out of this memorial and say to themselves, if it was me, could I have done what they did? It's the inspiration of this story that I think is important that we not forget.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
For more, we still have Voice of America's correspondent Amy Hybels with us on this broadcast. Amy, how does America keep the memory of what happened that day alive for those born before or after September 11th?
Well, sure, Priyanka. For anyone over the age of 30, we remember exactly where we were and what we were doing on that day. I was actually working for a local television station, and me and my photographer were sent to the hospital closest to the Pentagon. In the days that follow, I stood in front of that gaping hole on the west side of the Pentagon, reporting on a rescue-turned-recovery operation. It's a time that I will never forget. But for those that are 20 years of age or even younger, they either, were not even born at that time, or if they were born, they were very young, and they don't have any personal recollection or firsthand knowledge of the events that unfolded on that day. And it's really hard for them to make that connection unless, of course, they know someone that was personally involved or a family that perhaps lost a loved one. Now, that's where memorials really come into play in this country. We just learned about that incredible memorial that's been built in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They put that together in just about a year, which is a remarkable turnaround time. There are also other memorials, one in New York City and, of course, one here at the Pentagon. Now, the Pentagon Memorial actually sits on 2 acres of land right outside where the jetliner actually struck the building on that day. There are 184 memorial benches. They're dedicated to each of the victims, and they're organized in a timeline of their ages, starting with the youngest victim, who was 3-year-old Dana Falkenberg, to the oldest, 71-year-old John Yamnicki. Each bench at the memorial site is engraved with a victim's name. On Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady are expected to visit the Pentagon, as well as the National Memorial in New York City and the Flight 93 Memorial in Pennsylvania.
Right, Amy, my final question for you. This year will mark the first observance of the September 11th attacks without any U.S. troop presence on the ground in Afghanistan. Where are the troops now after their departure from the country?
Well, some have already been redeployed and others are at home here in the U.S. Now, soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum, New York, were among the first to deploy to Afghanistan in 2001, and the unit is now among the last to return after the drawdown. Now, they're going to observe the September 11th with a homecoming nearly 10 months in the making, after multiple delays and turning in their weapons after a historic deployment. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Chris Rowe said these troops helped turn over every remaining American base in Afghanistan before providing security at Kabul International Airport. They helped to evacuate more than 120,000 people while under constant threat. Keep in mind, about half of these final soldiers returning home were either born after or do not even remember the terror attacks in 2001 that started the war that they ended.
Amy Hybels, thank you so much for all your updates, and thank you for joining us on this special broadcast.